Hi, I'm Devin, Product Manager for OZO Live, and I'm here to talk about the user interface for the OZO Live software and the stitcher settings specifically. If you haven't seen some of our previous videos, just a quick recap. OZO Live is a software product that runs on reference hardware, which takes the 1.5 gigabit per second data feed that comes out of the OZO camera and converts it into a UHD video feed with 5.0 audio that can be used in any broadcast production. Right now we have the OZO Live machine running behind the wall here, and I'm connecting to it over the web using a standard browser on this laptop here. You can also connect via an iPad or any web browser, really. We've gone through some of the other features of the interface, and now we're going to focus specifically on stitching. As you're probably aware, stitching from multiple cameras is one of the biggest challenges for 360 video production. The OZO Creator software, which is used for offline production, uses a very sophisticated computational stitch, which creates almost seamless stitching with very little user input. Unfortunately, that stitch is very computationally intensive. It runs at about 5 seconds a frame, so it's not usable yet for live productions. For OZO Live, we're using a different stitch algorithm that uses a more traditional approach involving blending, warping, and sort of a grab bag of tricks in order to allow an operator to make as seamless a 360 experience as possible. So I'm going to walk you through some of the specific settings that you can use in order to optimize that 360 view so it is as seamless as it can be. So let's talk about how you set your scene, first of all, for a stitch. Camera placement is really crucial. You have to keep track of what it is that you expect to be able to present, and you also want to, if possible, have some control over the position of your actors. In general, you want to keep people out of seams because the best stitch is no stitch at all. Now, that isn't always possible, especially in live situations. That almost always isn't possible. So what you have to do is you have to be able to, you need tools at your disposal to be able to make the best out of even a not very great stitching situation. And that's what we have here. So I've set up the camera so that you can see on the screen here, I'm standing actually directly in one of the seams. And we also have some other challenges around here. We have a lot of lines across the ceiling and a lot of areas where it's an actual challenge to stitch. So how do you approach it? First thing we do is to turn the blend width all the way down. So blend covers up the seams, but first we want to see the seams so that we can decide what we do with them. So you can see right here, there's a seam running right through my head on the left eye at the bottom there. That's certainly not ideal. So once you can see the seams, the first thing you do is move them. Now, one of the great things about OZO is that you've got about 30 degrees of coverage between the lenses. So that gives you a lot of opportunity to move stitch areas to the left or right to get them out of the way. So we'll do that right now with the seam that's on top of me. So I'm going to move it 15 degrees to the left, and now I'm almost completely out of the scene. You can see there's a little bit here on my shoulder, but for the most part, I'm out of the seam. We can do the same thing with some of the other seams here. This one will move to get it off the desk. This one is right in the middle of a lighting instrument, so we'll move seam 3 a little bit. Now seam 4 you see is for the left eye, for the right eye only, left eye only. So I'll switch to the left eye here, and now I can move that seam so that maybe I've got it right on the corner of that rectangular element up there. So that's a good start. Now, once I've chosen the stitch locations, the next thing I can do on a per seam basis is to set their convergence depth. Now what this does is this warps the image slightly in order to choose which depth we get a perfect stitch. Now without using computational techniques, you can't have a perfect stitch at every depth. But you can make it perfect at one depth that you choose. So in this case, this is how I'm going to fix my shoulder here. So let's look here at the left eye, the right eye, stitch 1. We're going to move the convergence closer. And you can see, there we go, almost. We can get that just about perfect. You can see on the line of the desk, that's pretty good. It's always a little bit of a compromise, but I think that one's pretty good. Now we'll go back to 1.05. Now we can do the similar thing for each of the other seams. I'm not going to do that right now. Once you've got your convergence and your location set, then you can turn the blend width back up, and you'll see pretty quickly you've got a really nice stitch. And now this looks pretty seamless all the way across. Now that's a little bit of work. You may not always have the time to do that. You may not have the inclination. You may have an inexperienced operator. There is another option. If you just click the Auto Tune button here, the OZO Live system will do an error analysis of all the possible settings and will choose what it thinks is the best setting. Typically, the Auto Tune setting is not as good as an experienced stitching operator, but it's a lot better than doing nothing at all. So that gives you an opportunity to get up to speed on how to stitch. It's a good way to start a stitch and then go and edit it slightly by hand. One other thing to mention on the Stitcher settings page that's perhaps the most important feature and the most frequently used feature on this page, and that is digital pan. One of the most important things to do, especially in a multi-camera production, is to know where your viewer is looking, and then when you switch from one camera to another, you want to make sure that they're still looking at the central subject you want them to see. So in this case, we have me, hopefully the central subject of this video. I'm offset quite a bit to the left. Now, to pan, you can just click and drag and move me to the center. And now I'm in the center of the frame. And if you switch to this camera from another camera, then you're not going to have somebody having to whip around in their headset in order to see. I'll be right there in the middle of the frame after you do the switch. So that's a quick introduction to the features of the Stitcher setting tab. I hope you'll take a look at some of the other videos that we have for OZO Live and the rest of the OZO product suite. Thanks very much.